So hello everybody and welcome to the Highland Book Prize. The Highland Book Prize was established in 2017 by the Highland Society of London, and it is facilitated by Moniack Mhor, Scotland's creative writing centre. And the aim of the prize is to celebrate the rich and diverse literature that is written in the Highlands and Islands and about the Highlands and Islands. This year we are celebrating books that were published in 2022, and the long list was formed by the scores and reviews of a volunteer reading panel. So this really is a reader's prize at its heart. We are also very fortunate in that we have funding from the William Grant Foundation to encourage engagement with the books on the long list. In previous years, those events have been fully online, but this year we are really pleased to have been able to offer a hybrid event series. So there's been a mix of workshops in libraries and in schools, and in-person events in bookshops and other venues, and also online. So we are here today to talk about Confessions of a Highland Art Dealer. I was very lucky to visit Kilmorack Gallery and discuss Confessions of a Highland Art Dealer with the author Tony Davidson as part of the Longlist Event Series, and now we're delighted to share that conversation with you. Please enjoy. Thank you very much, Tony, for chatting to us about this book, which, as I said, has been longlisted for the Highland Book Prize 2022, Confessions of a Highland Art Dealer. So it's a bit of a mix, isn't it? It's a memoir, your own memoir, and it's a memoir of the gallery, if you like, as well, but also there's lots about the artists as well, the relationships that you've built over the years. So what came first? What drew you to write it in the first place?
Why did I write it? Well, I guess there was pressure from my partner, who's also a writer. So she said to me, if I don't write it, she'll write it. So I got up one morning without her knowing and went to the shed at the bottom of the garden, and I started the first chapter, opening the door. And then it became an urge to go on. So it wasn't really done with any intention at all. It was just an urge to do it, which is like a lot of artists. Not that I'm an artist, but I've been around that world for quite a lot.
But the writing is the art as well, isn't it? And that urge then, it's an interesting word. Did you find that, like, a lot of people talk about memoirs as cathartic, and a lot of people talk about writing memoirs as painful. So, you know, was it either of those things? Both of those things?
No, it was a joy. Discovering sort of the journey that not just me, but everybody's been on over the last 25 years. Back in '95, there was no mobile phone signal here. There was no internet. So the gallery's gone on a journey that's been shared with many people. So it was just a joy to sort of relive life again and the lives of all the other people too. Yeah,
and that journey, so I mean, it starts out in 1995, opening the door, as you said, and then ends up more or less in the present day. Mm-hmm. But what I quite liked about that journey is there's so much culturally that changed in the Highlands, in the art world, globally, over those decades, and you've managed to capture them all in the kind of different narratives that you've got in there.
Yes, 25 years is really it was my 25th year gallery, sort of present really to myself. Yes, and an awful lot has changed. Things have got bigger. Environmentally, there's been a lot of threats to this place. So the beginning of the book is quite dreamlike, when I was converting the church and I was in the company of Black Allen. So there's got a very different feel. That was part one. Mm-hmm. There's 4 parts, and by the time you get to part 4, it's a little bit darker. Mm-hmm. You know, the world is digital, it's sort of threatened, but art is very valid throughout everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Culturally, I suppose you talk about the lockdown period in the book, and that was one of the things that I think that came out of for a lot of people was how important art is when you're in that kind of when the whole society is under threat like that. How it is important to our well-being as people as well. So and you talked about Black Allen, you talked about the dreamlike beginning of it, which it was wonderful. Like the crooked path you talk about and
Yes.
how things just sort of happened.
Crooked path actually comes from a Zen thing. It's from Suzuki, who was a Zen Buddhist who brought Buddhism to America. So he was part of the 50s sort of thing. So I read his memoir. I'm not really a Buddhist. I'm not in anything. But I like the idea of people following paths. And I'd like more people to be able to follow an unusual path. So the book is really a call for people to follow their own crooked path, I think.
So just to clarify on that, for those that haven't read the book, it is dedicated to lovers, seekers and followers of crooked paths. And it did, I mean, I have to say, the first part of it as well, I found myself wishing to stumble across a gallery and found myself eating pasta and noodles in the gallery and drinking my morning coffee and in pools of sunlight. You know, as you say, it is very dreamlike and inspiring as well.
In a way, the early bits in the book are more concrete. They feel more concrete than the slightly surreal fourth part when the whole world is sort of unstable in a way. So I kind of found it, because all there's dream sequences and they come at the end when when there's different options open. So I was having fun playing with the form a little bit. There's a time jump as well, and that was part of the fun.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it makes sense as you read the book, you know, the way the narrative builds, because, you know, there's a few different points in the book where you're at a juncture and you're not sure where to go next with the gallery or how to respond to different things that happened, like the 2008 financial crisis, and that, you know, you get the sense of you kind of looking out into the world to see what's next.
That was the writing as well. I was getting to the point 2008 and going, the book's at 2008, what do I do? So I had the Whomping chapter, which is after I came from London, and I remember going back, when I was writing the book, I was at a point in the book when I'd done something and I wanted to find the way forward. And I suddenly remembered that that's what I did. I went for a thinking walk. So part of the drive in the book is the struggle to find the narrative, and it gives it a certain push as well, because every morning at 5 o'clock I would go, well, let's find a way to push this forward. And then I would leave it on a cliffhanger to start the next day. And
it works, it really works. And it is, because I think someone else described it as a page turner, and it is, you know, it's really compelling. But you talked, another thing that's really important to the narrative though, is the artists. You know, you talk about the gathering of the artists, you know, the family of artists essentially that you build over the years, and each time, you know, there's these little vignettes into the artists' lives and their homes, and they are absolute jewels. It's like a little constellation of artists throughout the narrative.
Yes,
and it's beautiful.
It's a joy writing about these people, and I've been seeking them out for a long time, and I've been writing about them as well. So, and some of them are quite surreal. Things like finding Håkon Tay, you know, in Glasgow. I mean, I had an urge, so I got up in the morning without his phone number or his address, and I knew that I was going to meet him. And I wandered the streets of Glasgow, and then I met Master Tay, Håkon Tay, founder of his own martial art. Whoa! And I found him in the middle of the street, covered in paint.
And did it really happen like that?
Yeah, it really happened like that.
It really happened
he said, you must be Tony. So life is surreal, and the stories can be kind of surreal. Everybody has their own journey.
Yeah. So if you wouldn't mind then, I'd quite like to, because that is one of the marvellous bits of the book, and I think it really captures how so much almost, it doesn't fall in your lap, that's not the right way to describe it, but the universe kind of, things just seem to happen in a beautiful way for you on that crooked path. Yeah. So if you wouldn't mind, could I read the bit where you meet Håkon Tay?
Well, if you don't mind, if you can.
So as you say, you literally just got up and gone searching for this artist. There were only 4 Tays in the phone directory, and I discovered an address near Glasgow with a phone number that didn't work. I wrote a letter, but no reply came back. It seemed Håkon worked behind the push-button coded door of a large network of studios near the city centre, so that is what I would try next. It was November and the gallery was closed for 2 weeks after 8 full months trading. I woke early. Today is the day to find Hawk On, I thought. I was on the train by 8 and in Glasgow by 11. I had no phone number, no appointment and no plan. The hunter's instinct was switched on. An art collector collects art and a gallery collects artists. This is madness, I thought, as I walked the streets towards his studio, past cafes and shop signs with incorrect punctuation. I was no longer at ease on grey pavements or surrounded by tall stone buildings. I don't even know what he looks like, I thought, but on the final right turn into his studio street, halfway down, there was a man who could be him. There was paint on his shoes, and he wore a once blue boiler suit, which now creaked with thick paint where brushes had been wiped, and ricocheted colours bounced from canvases had left a galaxy of dots. He was short, with black hair, stylish glasses, and movements that were more like teleportation than a walk. This could be no other person. Hawk On, you must be Hawk On Tay. Ah, you must be Tony. I have been expecting you. What do you know about Chi? Please come up to the studio.
Oh, that sounds good.
It is, and yeah. No, and it is. I'm glad you brought that one up because it's a great example. And did you, in terms of writing, though, all these people, over all these years, I mean, have you just got an exceptional memory?
No, well, I never thought so. But these, because it came back there, when you actually start writing these things, memories come back from whatever recess they lie in. So, and writing, putting word in front of word, that's how you live it again. So I enjoy these things. That's exactly how it happened.
Mm-hmm. And actually, even and I feel I've probably let down the dialogue slightly in the way I read it, but all of the dialogue throughout the book, all the voices are really distinct. All the characters are very distinct, and their speech is distinct with it, and you can really hear them. I mean, do you?
Well, that was part of the fun. Well, I guess if you're writing that, I'm a bit of a mimic, really, so beware.
Okay.
But no, everybody's got their voices, and I think artists are very distinct, because they're individuals doing something very unusual. If you're going to do sculpture for 50 years, you'll get your own way, you'll become like the stone, so you become something very specific. Mm-hmm,
mm-hmm. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it as someone who, is not involved in the art world at all. It did what really great books do and opens you out to a world you didn't even know existed, for me anyway, and I'm guessing for a lot of people. And to see into these artists' lives, but also the way the art world works, how art reaches people that want to buy art.
Yes. Well, it was a rediscovery for me as well, when you actually suddenly realise where you are in life. So it was, the whole thing was, writing it was an adventure. Mm-hmm. The final sections, because I split into sections like I was saying, the final one actually had, instead of an image, I was using bits of text. So the final one had the talking heads, when you, what was it called? A day in the, when you wake up in a different place, in a beautiful car. Yeah. So there does have this sort of, this feeling of lives, our lives, everybody's life being in a way unpredictable, mm-hmm. as well as predictable. Mm-hmm.
Well, and another of the themes that goes through the book though is connection, isn't it? And the way all those lives are connected, it was lovely to see them all brought together into one narrative. But you can see the spider web of connection that exists beyond that.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I guess I started writing this before lockdown. Okay. But then it went into lockdown, and I guess the lockdown showed you who's connected to what and how, when it goes quiet and other things. So connections, and everybody's connected is one of the themes of the book. Mm-hmm. And I think it should be a theme for all of our lives now, really, because we're all connected, not just through technology, but through everything. But
when you started the gallery, though, so you're starting a gallery in what was then fairly dilapidated church.
Yes, it was an old abandoned church.
Yeah, yes. in the Highlands,
yes,
which may not have seemed the most obvious place to start an art gallery at the time, with pink walls, no less.
With pink walls, yes, it was a bit sort of radical, and I didn't really, to be honest, know very much about it, but I was in the right place and the right time, and artists liked my approach because I was an individual doing something and they could relate to that. And I started off with very good artists like Gerald Lane.
Yes, because you talk a bit about that in the book, because you'd worked for him in his sculpture studio beforehand.
Yes, I was making bronzes for him. So I was, I nickel-plated the dragons at Bank Street Station in London for him. But if you're working alongside somebody like Gerald, I mean, I remember him saying that good enough isn't a word that I use. It actually was a word he used, but but actually, if you're doing something artistic, good enough, you don't want to be ruled by the balance sheet. You want to be ruled by things that are more important.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess absolutely. And where the story ends up, where you are now, is proof of that, I think.
Well, I've survived. And it's, I've got, and the artists are doing incredible things still, and some of that is the sort of support that I'm able to give them.
And how does that, so I mean, and there's a couple of points in the book where you go down to London for exhibitions or to be part of shows, and you do them, correct me if I'm wrong, but you do them because it seems like a sensible thing to do from a business point of view, from the artist's point of view, but it doesn't. Well, you talk about it. I won't.
Well, it's not really my thing. Yes, no, I hired a gallery in Cork Street, and actually, Cork Street was very quiet. It was busier here than in Cork Street, and yes, you just see this whole world that's not the way I like it. So I was very happy. I also went to put an exhibition in a very powerful club in London, and that was very, very surreal.
Yeah, it's quite an entertaining bit of the book. Yeah.
Yes, but we mustn't go down there too much. But you can always read it in the book.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. But I mean, nowadays you don't need to do London too much. I think if you build it, they will come. It's a cliche, but it's sort of true.
But I mean, a lot of the artists you meet in the book who are Highland-based artists are not necessarily, not all of them anyway, some of them are not all from the Highlands and are drawn to the Highlands as a place to create.
Yes.
And I mean, how much is that true of yourself as well?
Yes, well, I mean, I was born in Edinburgh, and I went to school in sort of St Andrews. That's where we lived. So yes, I was always pulled out. We went to holidays in Inveralligan as a child, and I hung out with people from Inverness as a student, and this is really where I belonged. And I just belong here, I can't help it. And people like Lottie Glob, of course, Danish, she's very much here, as well as being Danish too. So.
Yeah. But do you think that, I mean, there's something quite special, I think, about the place though, and in terms of what the space that it creates as well for art. The Highlands, I mean, specifically.
Highlands, yes. No, I think the Highlands is a very special place. It's also a very important place, and people must remember that our connection to the north and alternative ways of living is not just a romantic theme park. It's actually a very important part of the ecology of not just Britain, but everywhere. So we must remember what's here and look after it.
Absolutely, and I think in this book particularly, it's really tangible, that idea of the Highlands as you say, not just a remote. Let's not talk about the definition of the word remote, but kind of a backwater of a global landscape. It's a very central part of it, connected and connected with that.
Yes. I'm very sort of geography's an interesting thing. Yes.
So there was a point in the book where you had a visit from a primary school, and you talk about the questions that kids ask and how they're quite often the good questions.
Yes, I know. I'd love visits from kids, and once upon a time they used to bring whole primary schools, but they don't do that anymore. And it's lovely. Yeah,
but one of the questions that I can't find it now, but the answer you gave was something along the lines of, I think the question was how did it start, or why did you start? And you talked about the fact that there was 3 balls in the air, and it was yourself and the gallery and the artists, and it was a case of catching all the balls.
Yeah, so just I threw them in the air, and it was a bit of it isn't really a proper planning. It's it's just a sort of it's just what happened. Yeah. It's yeah.
And those are the kind of the 3 main narratives in the book as well. Like, did you find it difficult to balance those when you were writing, in terms of, you know, your own, because you're not. I'm not. I don't like talking about myself, and I've written a memoir, so it's a little bit sort of strange. But I guess I have sort of become subservient in a way to the gallery. I also talk about feeding the monster. So I almost, when I was doing the gallery, starting it up, I was aware of starting something, and then my job would be just to fuel it. Just to feed it. So I was hoping one day that this monster would feed me, but I've been, that's one of the motivations sort of behind it. Yeah. So there is a sort of philosophy that's come down, sort of slightly warped business philosophy that started from the beginning. I think more people should adapt it. I don't know about warped, I love it. And I think that definitely, I mean, your story throughout this is very much tied in with the gallery's story. I mean, the gallery feels like a character in the book, actually. And when you were writing it, did it feel like you were writing a character, or was it more? The
gallery, well, the building is a character too. Yes, I mean, it's sort of, I start off when I open the door and Black Alan shows me it, and it's a form of love, really. I mean, I still, you say, do I have a good memory? I don't know if I do, but I still remember the way it smelt when you enter a building that's been disused for 25 years and the dust is an inch thick. It's not dirt, it's a very special sort of, it was a special smell. I mean, now it smells of coffee and fire and oil paintings, so that'll never come back again. So I've forgotten the question. I was getting nostalgic.
Okay. Yeah, no. Well, I suppose I was thinking about the building. The building as a character, and that absolutely, you know,
yes. Well, it is the building and the place too. I feel very. The whole Kilmorack, I think, is a magical place. You know, I think if there was a spirit of the place, little fairies and stuff, I think they look after me. So I think being here is something that's been very nourishing. And I think so. Obviously, when you took it on, it was a church. You know, you talk about that in the book, about the kind of potentially controversial decision at the time in the local community to turn it from, I mean, it was a disused church. It wasn't still a practicing church, but to turn it into a gallery. Yes, the local the church elders. I mean, back then it was very different times. A lot of the church elders, they would with the cemetery, they would close the gate every time, and you weren't allowed to use names like mum and dad on the grave things. You weren't really allowed to leave flowers in the wrong places. So it's changed an awful lot. So turning a church into a place of commerce was really frowned on back in sort of 96. But they eventually sort of let me have it.
Well, I think, honestly, it's a great thing, and I'm very glad that you were pushed into writing it, because I think that if, you know, your partner that said she would write it if you didn't, I'm sure she would have done a brilliant job, but I think your voice in it is one of the things that's really distinct and likeable about it, and it's a really warm read, you know.
Yeah, well, I enjoyed the writing, and you know, I've done a lot of writing from the gallery, but at school I wasn't a good writer. You know, I was famed for not being very good. So actually to discover that I can do this is quite empowering.
Yeah, and beautifully, and really beautifully. So thank you so much for chatting.
Thank you very much for coming, and thank everybody there.
Yes, thanks for watching.